Thank you very much, Daisy. As Daisy said, the APTA has worked really hard to try and integrate all the speakers across the sessions. And so I'm going to pick up on what Mark has just been saying and just follow on from that. Because you see, we're sitting at a moment in time in history when the forces of change are shaping the world in unprecedented ways. It's easy, especially in your industry, to look and see just the economic implications and think that's it. But if we could all wave a magic wand, say some magic words this morning, abracadabra, and fix the economy, I still don't think that your industry would go back to normal. If there's anything that I want to say this morning, it's simply that there is no normal anymore. And even when and if and as we come out of recession and the economy begins to grow again, it isn't going back to the way it used to be. You can't grit your teeth and hang on for a little longer and then go back to doing business the way you used to do business. You see, we're living in a complex, fast-moving, fast-changing world. And all around the world, in industries across the board, I think the key word right now is uncertainty. We just don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know how things are going to emerge. How do you lead? How do you work in that type of environment? And Mark's mentioned a number of the forces that are causing that uncertainty. In that environment, there is one thing we know for sure, and that is that all of us need to learn this skill. This is not something you can leave to the industry leaders. This is not something you can delegate to consultants. This is not something you can leave to the CEO of your company and hope somebody comes up with good ideas. We all need to learn to spot the trends. We all need to learn to get our heads around the things Mark was talking about. At every level of every part of your company, at every part of this industry, we need to spot those trends. If we don't, we could get ourselves into a little bit of trouble. Like these two guys over here. You're like these two guys, going about doing your work. Some of you are so good at what you do that you could do it half asleep. We don't necessarily look around us at the big forces coming our way, unprecedented events that have never happened before. And then there's a noise, a bump, a newspaper headline, a recession, a new political regime. And suddenly we wake up. You've got to get the team woken up. You've got to get the motor of your business going if you can, before it's too late. In this economic environment, let's not talk about bailout either, right? Let's steer clear of that. So my task in just a few minutes this morning is to overview some of these trends. My team and I work hard at this. This is what we do for a living, to try and understand these disruptive forces. And we'd like to suggest that there are 5 of them that you need to watch. Mark is right, this is a complex thing, fully interacting, all of these trends, and many others as well. But if we look at politics and economics as the bedrock, the foundation of what happens in our world, on top of that, we believe these 5 forces are the cause of most of the disruptive change taking place in our world right now. The TIDES is an acronym that stands for technology, institutional change, demographics, the environment and ethical concerns, and shifting social values. 2 of those topics will be covered in a lot more detail later this morning, technology and the environment, and the other 3 we'll dip into briefly now. But technology, just very briefly, because this does really lay the foundation, is absolutely vital for us to understand. We are living at an unprecedented moment in human history, where the power of computers, their size and the cost of just unbelievable computing power has been reduced down to these little devices that are in the palms of our hands. Most of us could not spend a day without our smartphones anymore. There's a lot you could get through in a day, if you left it at home, but most of you would go home for your smartphones if you left them there, because these have become integral to our lives. And as we've integrated these new powerful technologies into our lives, immensely powerful. There is more computing power in your smartphone than NASA needed to get Neil Armstrong to the moon and back. In fact, to be honest, there's more computing power in your washing machine than NASA used to get Neil Armstrong to the moon, which doesn't mean you can go to the moon in your washing machine. Don't take everything literally. Some things are metaphors. There's actually more computing power in your smartphone or the connected power of your smartphone than existed in the entire world in 1980, which is a remarkable thought. But we know this. And what we know for sure is that if you are going to be successful over the next few years, you are going to have to focus your energy on what these smart devices are going to do to our world. If you and your business are not getting more digital, more mobile, if you're not getting smarter, in other words, moving into the app world, that's the smart of the smartphone, the app world technologies around it. If you're not getting more social, more connected, more networked, more always on, and if you're not using big data, which we'll talk about later in the morning, to become more intelligent, then you are falling behind. We are going to be hit by a flood of data over the next few years. We already are. But more and more and more people are going to rely on those who can make intelligence out of the noise. And that, I think, is your only possible future. Everything else is replaceable, and the technology can do everything else you do, except to bring technology, to bring social, to bring connection. But the technology piece, others will follow and deal with in more detail. The I in our model stands for institutional change. This has got to do with the changes to structures in society, structures in industries, structures in organizations. Formal and informal institutions govern our world, and they are changing faster now than they ever have in the past. At the end of last year, about a year ago, I was working with a small media company in New York, and one of the guys in the group, it was a small management team we were talking with, he looked at me, and I won't try the accent, he was New York Irish, with that very distinctive accent, and he said to me, he said, "No, you're wrong. There are some institutions in the world that just go through history unchanged, like my beloved Catholic Church." And I'm glad I kept his email address, because a few weeks later, his Pope retired. Now, if that's not a game changer for the unchanging church, I don't know what is. I don't know of any institution, big or small, from the Roman Catholic Church to my football club, Manchester United. I mean, you know I would support Manchester United. I was born in Johannesburg. What other club is there to support? Yeah, all the way down to your family, the definition of a family. These things are all changing. What does it mean for you, though? There are at least 3 levels of institutional change that the travel industry would need to consider. Of course, the first is the biggest. It's the legislation, the regulations that are shaping our industries. And a great example, of course, of an industry being shaped by regulation is financial services and the banks. It's remarkable to look at them from a distance and see, how do you make plans? How do you set strategies when you know for sure that the legislation and regulation that governs your industries is going to change? You don't know what it's going to change to, but you know it is going to change. And yet you still have to make your plans. But of course you know this as well, because these same regulators are coming for you. They're coming to your industry too, because the regulators, having seen what happened in the financial services sector, having seen the devastation caused by the economic recession, are now looking at all the industries that deal with people's money. And that's pretty much everybody, because the point of an industry is to get people's money. And when you start to take people's money, the regulators are starting to show an interest. And more and more and more, you are going to have to deal with this. This is really emerging out of the technology-driven ability for transparency that we have. The regulators wanting to push more transparency, but even if the regulators weren't there, you know that transparency is there. You can no longer compete with the other people in this room based on your product. But this is an insane thought. You cannot compete because your customers can check in an instant everything that everybody else is saying. You can't give them any piece of advice that they can't double, triple, and quadruple check. And they will be less likely to trust you than anybody else in their network. So this is not just about regulation and legislation being imposed on you from outside. This is about a change in mindset, about how people go about protecting themselves from bad advice and bad decisions. The second level of institutional change is actually internal in both your industry and your company. This has got to do with what we call the orthodoxies. The orthodoxies are the rules and norms that you think are rules and norms because you made them up. But they're not actually rules. You could break them if you wanted to. The only difference is that you don't, because everybody else in the room does pretty much the same thing that you do. This is where benchmarking comes in. I'm not a huge fan of industry benchmarking at all, because for most people use benchmarking as a way to find out the minimum acceptable standard and then never exceed it. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't benchmark. You should know what the minimum acceptable standard is, but you shouldn't aim for it. That should be the thing you leave in the far distant past behind you. And this is our problem. Our problem is we often, because we've been in the industry, I'm pretty certain there's probably somebody in the room who's been to every one of these 60 conventions. There normally is at these types of events. And that's great, and there's wisdom and experience in that, but there's also danger. There's danger of saying, this is how it's always been done, this is the best way to do it, there is no other way. These are the orthodoxies that govern and restrict and control and help us. The problem is they help us too much. Until some snot-nosed young kid with an iPad comes in and changes all the rules, starts giving stuff away for free, starts doing things in minutes that you thought had to take days, starts making promises you can't believe are being made. And initially you write them off because it's insanity, and then they eat your lunch. We need to get rid of these orthodoxies. We use a little picture in our company to remind us to do this. We have a monthly meeting and we put this picture up to remind ourselves to get rid of one silly orthodoxy a month. I mean, what were they thinking? Really, I need somebody to explain that sign to me. Is this a place where there are very intelligent seagulls? And that's just one belligerent albatross or whatever it is? Is it a place where you used to be able to bring seagull pets and now you're not allowed to? I don't know what they were thinking with that sign. But there are many things, and especially in your industry, where the customers look at it and say, what the hell are they thinking? And you need to get rid of those as soon as you possibly can. Don't try and do 20 at once, you'll hurt yourself, but one a month for the rest of your life. It's a good habit to get into. The third level of institutional change makes it a little bit more personal. And that is that if all the things we're going to say about technology today are true, you must be nervous of your job. You must be nervous of your place in the machine, because the machine is coming for you too. And not just for you. Lawyers, doctors, engineers, accountants, actuaries, surgeons, GPs, psychologists, and the rest. Unless we are doing things computers can't do, we are immensely and imminently replaceable by machines. The point I'm trying to make is wonderfully made in a great book called The Next Global Stage, in which the author says this: over the last 2 decades, I'd argue the last 5 or 6 years in particular, the rules for success and change have shifted. The rules for success and failure in every industry, in every institution in the world, political, social, economic, personal, organizational, professional rules are being rewritten. And if that's true, then you have to be doing something different. Different times require a different script. Let me make this personal for you. If the amount of change, if the rate of change outside of your system is greater than the rate of change inside your system, whether your system is your industry, your company, yourself, if the rate of change outside exceeds the rate of change inside, then you are becoming extinct. You are becoming irrelevant. How's that working for you? Sobering. but important. That is institutional change, shaping our world in so many ways. The D in our model stands for demographics. Demographics, population, as Mark had it on his slides, is the study of population, understanding where population movements are going. And here we could spend the whole day, as we could on any of these slides. Just a few things for your attention this morning. Most of these you already know, but they are significant beyond belief. We know that there are more and more elderly people in the world. The world is getting older on average. I don't know if you know this, but the Queen has stopped sending letters to people, or telegrams as it used to be, on their 100th birthday. I know this because my grandmother is going to turn 100 next February. She was born in February 1914, when life expectancy, by the way, for a woman born in the British Empire was 47. And she has more than doubled that life expectancy. She will only get a letter from the Queen on request on her 100th birthday, and a £20 note. She'll get one automatically on her 105th birthday. Apparently the Queen was just too busy with too many telegrams, because the number of people turning 100 is increasing by 400% a year at the moment. That's not my grandmother, by the way. She'd be horrified. She's a clean living old woman. She lives in Bournemouth, I think, where most 100-year-olds live. I mean, that's what it feels like to me when I go and visit there. Anyway, apologies to the Bournemouth Tourist Association. I know Southbourne's a little bit younger. Anyway, here's a statistic to wake you up. More than half of all the people who have ever turned 80 are still alive. There are 164 million people in the world older than 80. That's half of all the people who've ever turned that age. And by 2050, that number will have grown to 500 million. And the great news for your industry is that the old model of retirement, the sort of gardening, golfing, fishing, do-nothing version is gone. And the new version is a whole lot better for your industry. Again, apologies if there are any Saga representatives in the room. But the old model, the old concept of the genteel Saga holiday is not what they're looking for. And I know Saga know this. Adventure holidays, doing things they always wished they had done. This is a different mindset for a different generation. And the industry, I don't think, is keeping up as much as they should. On the other side of the equation, Mark's already referred to the Gen Ys. I prefer to call them the digital natives. These are the young people who have grown up their whole lives with mobile phones, with the internet. This is probably my favorite photograph in this presentation, because these four young people are actually sending text messages to each other. That's how they choose to communicate, not because they are stupid or lazy or have no social skills. In fact, they have highly developed digital social skills. I have three daughters, 14, 12, and 8. And I said we should give them names, but my wife said it's the digital age. Numbers are fine. Anyway, I was taking 12 to school the other day. She had a social function, and we picked up two of her friends. And these three preteen girls sitting in the back of my car on their way to a school social function. You can imagine the scene. I really couldn't take it. I looked back at them and I said, look, the three of you, really, seriously, giggling, laughing, hysteria, that's what I'd prefer. What's going on? And Hannah, my 12-year-old, said, Dad, actually there are 5 girls in this conversation. There are 2 girls in 2 other cars on their way to the same function. And out of respect for them, we do not want to have more of a conversation in this car than the 5 of us could have together. I kid you not. There is a level of etiquette and engagement and involvement that you know nothing of. A magazine is an iPad that does not work. What a phrase. Do you think she'll ever read a print magazine? Buy a print newspaper? Apologies to the lead sponsors. But they know this already. They've got a really good app, I think. Do you think she'll ever read one of your brochures? And how happy will she be working in your company? That's the real question you've got to ask here. And you don't have 18 years until she arrives. Her older brothers and sisters and cousins have grown up as Gen Y, as digital natives. And they are already in your offices. They are already influencing family holiday decisions. They are already on the teams making corporate business travel plans. You cannot ignore this generation any longer. They want all their data always available all of the time on the device of their choosing with the programs of their choice, instantly, for free, real-time, updated now. Does that sound like your office? Needs to, and soon. There are many other demographic trends we could talk about, and many of them are good news for you. Again, there's massive migration. People are used to traveling just in their family selves, moving from place to place, being in different places. There's huge urbanization. There's an increase in the middle class all around the world because of that. The urbanization is one of the causes, and being caused by a massive, unprecedented historical drop in poverty. Not relative poverty, there will always be poor people, but the poorest of the poor people are moving up into what we would call middle class. The middle class is squeezed. We know that, a horrible cliche phrase, but it is true. And so there's still pressure on your industry. But the long-term view is that you have got many, many, many more customers and clients coming your way, but you do have to see the world in different ways. And here, Mark, I apologize for this. I didn't have time to check with you in between. I hadn't seen your slides, but you put up a world map as well. I like mine better, by the way. I think it puts Europe in the correct place. Not in the middle at the top anymore, unfortunately, and you do have to get your heads around that. I do get standing ovations for this map in Australia. They love it. But this map does remind us. I do have it on my wall in my office, and I would suggest you try and find one and do that too. It reminds us of what has changed. But Mark, one of the things your map didn't have was Africa. Africa's growth rate is 7% at the moment, between India and China. And too many people are ignoring it. You see, the shift in the world has moved from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Rightly so, we think and concentrate there. But if you want to get ahead of the curve, not just be on the curve or catch up with the curve, that economic power is going to continue to shift to the Indian Ocean over the next few years. Sure, Africa's still the Wild West, but some people might want to visit it. The Wild West can be fun too. The E stands for the environment. You're going to have somebody look at this in a very sharp focus later in the day, so I'm going to say nothing of it now and just go to the S. The S is for shifting social values. If everything else you hear this morning is even only half true, and I'm sure it's all true, but even if it was only half true, it must be obvious that people's expectations, people's views of what is right and wrong, good and bad, normal and weird, all of this is changing. That's what social values are, people's expectations of what life is. And this brings me back, as a way of summarizing, to my main point. There is no normal anymore. There isn't even a new normal about to emerge. We are living at one of those moments in time that Mark talked about, where everything is changing. Those moments in time last for 40 or 50 years. They look short when we look back at them from history's perspective. But living through them, they're a lifetime. Our lifetime. We are the generation that gets to live through 40 or 50 years of change. You have to learn to live with uncertainty. Learn to live with constant change. Not find the solidity on the other side. We're seeing this in all aspects of our lives. We're seeing it probably most controversially in how we define family and marriage. This has changed faster than any other social value has changed in the history of the world. The country I was born in, South Africa, was the 6th country to make gay marriage legal, and now the country I live in now, in London in the UK, has become the 14th to do that. And this is not going to go everywhere fast. This is going to divide us for a long time still in history. But it is just an example, whichever side of this debate and argument you land on, it's an example of how fast social values are changing. Bring it back to the workplace and we find simple questions like, what is a normal career? Any of you got a normal career? There's no such thing anymore. What does a normal day look like? Have any of you had a normal day recently? Where everything went according to plan and everything just... We don't have these things anymore. At every level of our lives, there's no such thing as normal. There isn't even such thing as a normal working environment, a normal employee, a normal team. And you can go even further and connect in with organizations like Elance or TaskRat or Odesk. We don't have the time now to find out how many of you even know about these things. But this is micro outsourcing. Any job that can be done at a digital distance, there are millions of people out there ready to do it instantly. Now, I just got a 30-page document translated 2 weeks ago. It took the person 2 days and they charged me £30. And you do that all on Elance, and it's remarkable. Most of you probably don't even know about it. You need a new circle of friends, by the way, to help you find out about this stuff and keep up, because the world is changing. Now, I don't want you to walk away from my session thinking that technology is the solution. We just have to go apps, we have to go to technology, change all our institutions. No. Look, I wish we had more time, and other speakers will pick up on these threads. I'm just laying a foundation for the morning. But each of these 5 forces is powerful enough to change our near future on their own. All 5 are happening at the same time, with politics and economics added to the mix. What a remarkable moment to be alive. And yet I think Mark Twain got it exactly right. It's not what we don't know about the future that is going to trip us up. Partly because I think you should be looking at the future, looking under the horizon to see what's coming. And when you do, I think you'll see it. The future doesn't arrive as fast as it appears to arrive. It's just that you're not concentrating. But when it does arrive, the biggest problem is yesterday's logic. The biggest problem is trying to do what you've always done, just cheaper, better, faster. The biggest problem is the things you think you know for sure about your industry that just ain't so anymore. What a remarkable time to be alive. What a scary time to be alive. The choice is ours. Threats and opportunities abound. If you'd like more information, you can connect with me. I'll be here for the rest of the morning. We can interact. I'll be on the panel later. But also get hold of me. Download our company's free app to keep up with all of our trends. And if you are on Twitter, you would have picked up 3 tweets that I sent during the presentation that would have given you more information. We were running about 2 minutes behind. So if you were watching Twitter, I was just showing off. But thank you very much for your time. I'll see you later in the panel discussion. Thank you.